Hi, this is Carl from Linguagenesis, and this is part 3 of the discussion on the Rosetta Stone language learning software. As mentioned in part 1, this is a highly regarded language learning product, a piece of software by the vast majority of members of the language learning public, and it's also frequently used and is very popular in the US Army Corps, other US administrations, and also in mainstream and further education in the United States of America. I also mentioned that it would be my personal recommendation to buy this particular software, as in my opinion as a professional linguist, it's one of the best marketed language learning products out there, readily available for particularly independent learners. I mentioned as well that it's helped me to develop my knowledge and understanding of the linguistic structures of new modern foreign languages, which I've started to learn at beginner's level, most notably Dutch, Greek and Portuguese. I said as well that if you're interested in studying a modern foreign language, provided it's been released by the Rosetta Stone series, that you can generally study it to a third level, although on the CD which I've been given by the friend of a student of mine, I can only study up to a maximum of level 2. And it appears that where the least commonly spoken languages in the world are concerned, I can only study just the one initial level. I said as well that what I was going to do was to pick up a new language just for the purpose of recording this particular series, even though I may or may not continue to study it thereafter. The one which I chose was Swedish, in which I only have a knowledge of the numbers 1 to 10. You may have seen another YouTube video in which I gave numbers 1 to 10 in a total of 22 word languages, and so therefore my knowledge of Swedish vocabulary is still rather restricted, although it has increased by around 5 words or so since I recorded part 2. I spoke about the fact that, as I said, on the Swedish language I can only study one level. If you click the level that you want to study in question, it's then broken down into a number of units. The units are then subdivided into a number of lessons, and then you can actually study each of those lessons. I spoke about the excellent linguistic structure, the integration of the vocabulary, and the fact that you get plenty of opportunities to revise again and again and actually get accustomed to the way in which the same pieces of vocabulary and the same word categories are used in a wide range of different contexts, and arguably ones in which you would use them as a language learner as well, applying your knowledge of the language in question. I spoke in part 2 of this series about the different exercise types which you can actually select under the activities which test different skills, most notably reading, writing, speaking and listening, or at least a combination of those. But the argument which I put forward was that if you try and consciously pick the technique or the methodology which integrates as many of these skills as possible, then arguably you're more at an advantage, and you can arguably derive a great deal more benefit out of your learning as a whole. So if you actually go onto the activities, then my suggestion would be to select exercise 1, which actually incorporates, as the Rosetta Stone activities window suggests, tests listening and reading. But what I want to put forward here is the argument that while the course might want you to actually focus on listening and reading, if you engineer your own learning style, then you can incorporate the aspects of speaking and writing into that. In other words, let's do it. For example, let's click exercise 1. I'm going to delve into lesson 1 of unit 1. So I'm given the pronunciation, as you can hear, en poika. So therefore, as soon as it's been said by the native speaker on the software, I've repeated it, so therefore I'm choosing to incorporate the spoken skill within this particular exercise through imitating the pronunciation and trying to adopt a relevant intonation. Again, en poika. Then I can look at it and I can read it, and then I can say it again, en poika. At the same time, I can get used to the pronunciation, and then I can actually try to work out for myself what are the rules of pronunciation which govern the consonants and the vowels within the Swedish language. En poika, I can see the N, the P, the J and the K are pretty much the same as in English, but where the vowels are concerned, they're not as clear cut as they would be in English, and obviously the intonation would be rather different as it is throughout the whole phrase. En pojke. I know from Unit 2 that this is a boy. I can also see the similarity with the German as far as the indefinite article is concerned, the translation of a is in a boy, which is similar to the German ein. But the word for boy completely different from German and even from Dutch. But as I say, I know this from Unit 2. En pojke. Now this is incorporating, as far as the producers of the Rosetta Stone course are concerned, just reading and listening skills, because I can read the word and I can listen to it being spoken. But in addition to that, we've got the pictorial association, which is what Rosetta Stone has included into its software as a means of just going one step further, whereby we can actually learn through exposing ourselves not only to language but also to linking the vocabulary and the spoken words to the concrete nouns to which they apply. In other words, the nouns, the concrete nouns, which we find in our external environment all around us. So, as I say, I can listen to it, and consciously engineering my style and approach as a learner, I can speak it, adopting the relevant intonation, or as accurate as I hope to be, and also looking and giving consideration to the rules of pronunciation, and again reading and ensuring or asking myself which ones are similar to English and which rules of pronunciation seem to be evidently different. I can go on to the next question. Let me just click this. This is ein Hund, which is obviously a dog similar to German. Now I'm looking away now. I've looked away, so I've excluded the component of the reading skill from this question by looking away. And the native speaker said een kat, which is a cat. So I look towards the bottom of the screen where the 4 pictures are, but I ignore what is actually written there in the top left-hand corner. If I weren't as interested in developing my listening skills, which is obviously quite important in one foreign language learning in order to be able to render accurate pronunciation and intonation in the spoken language, then as I say, if I weren't interested in that, I could turn down the volume completely and just look at the way in which the phrases are spelt. And here we've got, as I remember. So this is me being conscious about being able to remember and not doubting my tendency to forget, which does happen from time to time, but not as often as it used to do. We have een flicka, which I know to be a girl. So I'm not listening to anything being spoken at all, but obviously this, I think, is an important and an integral part of the language learning process. The next one is het plan, which I know I came across years ago in a stay in Spain in 2001 when I met a Swedish lady who actually told us this word, and it was pronounced het plan. Now I'm also thinking to myself, right, there must be 2 different words for a. We have and then we have et. So is the reality this, that if a word is masculine or feminine, you use for a, and if it's neuter, as you have in German, then the word must be et. So I'm giving, or I'm trying to guess the grammar rules which apply to Swedish. Whether this is dangerous or not is actually another issue. So what I'm doing here is I'm engineering my own approach as a learner in order to incorporate the 4 elements of reading, writing, speaking and listening into this exercise, but at the same time I'm choosing what I believe is the best technique out of the 4 which Rosetta Stone is making available to me.